Oh, hi there, neighbor, and welcome to my deck tech. So I'm Sam, and today I will be deck teching Temmet, Vizier of something. Temmet is rather interesting commander. He's white-blue, a white and a blue to cast. He's a 2-mana 2/2, probably losing the fight to an actual grizzly bear. Build the deck around him, which it's just a really interesting challenge to try to build around this commander. And at the beginning of combat on your turn, you can give target creature token you control +1/+1 and unblockable until the end of turn. Now, this is an interesting ability because usually token strategies want to make a really wide board and have a lot of different creatures. But what Temmet incentivizes is one really big token. You don't usually get something where you want really big tokens. I mean, you're always happy to have really big tokens, but usually with token strategies, you're trying to fill up the board and then give them all like +1/+1 to make them bigger and just anthem the hell out of everything. But Temmet doesn't really want to do that. Like, you don't really care about having a huge board. Really, honestly, you're just perfectly happy with having one really big token. That does bring me to one problem I had when building this deck, which is he's not green. And green can make some pretty big tokens. Blue-white, you don't really get a lot of that. White has a lot of filling the board with like 1/1s and stuff like that, and you just, if you want, you can anthem them and just get them big and swing in, but it doesn't have a ton of just big stuff. But then blue comes in, and it does offer us a solution, which is copying things. So you have an actual card that just happens to also be a token and triggers all your token synergies. He also has embalm, and so this is kind of interesting. So the way that this is going to work is you can play him for 2, and then let's say he dies. So then normally you choose to put him back in the command zone, but this time you just don't. So he'll go to the graveyard, and now you can use the embalm ability. And so the embalm ability lets you pay 5 and exile him from the graveyard, and then bring him back as a token copy. With the way commander works, you can choose to send Timmy to the command zone instead of exile. So this means you can pay 2 for him, and then he'll die, and you'll pay 5 for him next time. But then you won't have triggered the command tax a second time. So now you're playing him for 4. To start off, you need to make tokens in the first place, which is where all these guys come in. You have cards like Chronozoa and Mirror Sigil Sergeant, and these cards, if they're left alone, will just fill up the board with copies of themselves. So you're going wide, but with bigger things than usual. Wingmate Rock and Blade Splicer, which are just one-time effects, they make a decently sized token. Precursor Golem, which is an interesting card, and I'll come back to him later, but he makes 2 3/3s and has some other fun stuff that can happen. So Precursor Golem says, whenever a player casts an instant or sorcery spell that targets only a single golem, including this one and the 2 tokens it makes, that player copies that spell for each other golem that spell could target. Each copy targets a different one of those golems. So this is a plus side and a negative side. So on the negative side, it takes 1 removal spell and every single golem you have on the board is gone. But the plus side is you can do ridiculous things like cast a Rite of Replication on it. And if you cast a Rite of Replication on it, it will get you 5 copies of the Precursor Golem. Then it'll also get you 5 copies of each of the 2 3/3s that the Precursor Golem made originally. And then the 5 Precursor Golems will make 10 more 3/3s because they each make 2 on their entry. Twilight Drover. It's a token deck. It's good. Another way to do it is you make tokens while casting instants and sorceries, because this is a blue deck and we can do that. So you've got Tolerant Summonings, but the better one is probably Metallurgic Summonings, because this lets you make really big tokens, which is what you want when you can swing in with 1 token unblockable each turn. Speaking of big tokens, Desolation Twin. 10 mana, 10/10, with a 10/10 friend. Pretty good. Scytheclaw Bone Horde They're living weapon equipments, which are very useful because they enter with a germ token, and you can make that token unblockable. Scytheclaw is very good in particular because it's really good when it hits. It makes someone lose half their life. You've got other ways to just make really big tokens like Stitcher Giralf, which is a lot better in a multiplayer game, but even on your own, you have some pretty big things like Desolation Twin to make really big tokens. And then Phyrexian Processor. So, you could be sensible. You could do 10 life, you could do 20 life even. Or, you could put the balls to the walls and go 39 life. Because here's what that lets you do. That means next turn, you're swinging in for 40 unblockable damage. And that will fuck someone's day up. We move on to the copiers. So you've got stuff like these guys, and these they're pretty simple. They put a token copy. This one is technically a clone on the first try, but on the way back, once you embalm it, it becomes a token. Populate guys. So these, you already have to have made a token. You can do that by this giant stack here, or you can have made a copy with basically any of the other things in this stack. Wake the Reflections is pretty good because it's as cheap as you can get for a populate. It's just 1 mana. Populate. You're already making really big tokens, which means populate is a lot better in this deck than it is in most. You've got Sign of Utugazi. He does the same thing, but with a 4/4 body, and comes with a 1/1 bird. It's a nice little bird. So you've got Rite of Replication, which you can use for 4 to just make 1 copy, or you can use 9 and make a shit ton. Tempt with Reflections, Saheeli's Artistry, these usually will get you more than 1. Saheeli's Artistry can be hit or miss, but at the very least, it usually copies a mana rock, and then just also a creature. And then the biggest one-shot copier is Clone Legion. It copies an entire board. Then you've got these guys. Followed Footsteps, Helm of the Host. These are just going to make a copy each turn. Seance, you have to have stuff in your graveyard. Stuff's going to die, so it's going to go off. So here we have Stolen Identity, which is probably the best copier and arguably just the best token generator in the entire deck. Cypher lets you exile this spell and then you choose a creature. It can be the creature you just made a token copy of. Whenever that specific creature deals combat damage to a player, you get to cast the spell again. Our commander lets something become unblockable. You make a token copy. Then you cipher onto the token you just made, and then you can give that token unblockable as long as you have your commander out. So you just keep making a giant board of whatever you want. As you might have noticed, that all takes a lot of mana. We have ramp, because we need it. Soul Ring, Thought Vessel, all that jazz. Not much to talk about. The fun things are the creature ramps. Target them with our token copiers and just keep getting more and more mana to let us do our stuff. Solemn's probably best for that. Even with ramp, it takes a while. We're kind of slow. So what we need to do is we need to slow down the game. So that brings us to this pile, which is just answers, basically. Just lots of answers. We're blue-white. We have answers. So we have some counter spells, we have some spot removal, and we have board wipes. I'm not going to talk much about these. These are just blue-white answers. You'll see them in a lot of decks. You have Tristani's Judgment. It's 6 mana, exile a creature. That's really bad, to be honest. Like, you usually do that for 1. It's kind of bad. But you then get a Populate, which makes it okay. It's still probably the worst removal spell in the deck, but it's synergistic. You get to exile any non-land permanent you want, and every one of the controller's opponents gets a token copy of it. And, I mean, we're us, so, like, we just happen to be able to give it unblockable and copy it multiple times, but don't let that distract you. We have helped out our friends. Board wipes that give you giant creatures. So, Crush of Tentacles isn't technically a, like, Wrath of God, but but it bounces everything. It returns all non-land permanents to hand, which hits stuff that isn't creatures as well, so you've hit a lot of mana rocks and stuff, which can hurt you sometimes, but let's be honest, it'll usually hurt everyone else more. If you manage to surge it, then you also get an 8/8 octopus.
Word of caution, the plural octopus is actually octopuses.
I'm assuming he's pointing to the green screen, but I don't know. Then, Phyrexian Rebirth, I mean, as much as I love Krakens, it's probably just a better version of Crush of Tentacles, because you get to destroy all creatures, and then you make an XX equal to the number of creatures you destroyed. In a 4-person game, that's usually a lot. That brings us to our last little category, which is really just an other category. It's little things that help hold the deck together. So you've got some token synergies like Intangible Virtue and Anointed Procession. Anointed Procession is specifically just really good. It lets you make 2 of all those giant tokens you're making, and that helps a lot. Intangible Virtue, your token deck, you're playing white. You've got a little bit of Recursion in here, Myria Shepherd, and Archaeomancer. I actually really like the Archaeomancer because the way this works is you play your Archaeomancer and you can just get something back from the grave. So, which means you can have your copy spell in the graveyard. I'm going to use Crackling Counterpart for this. So, you then play your copy spell on the Archaeomancer. This will make a new copy of the Archaeomancer. See the beautiful editing. So, then the spell resolves, which means that the Archaeomancer goes onto the board, and then the spell goes to the graveyard. Now your ETB triggers, and your ETB can get back the thing you just cast to make it. And then you just repeat until you have no mana. Then you've got Swiftfoot Boots, just give something haste, give it hexproof. I actually like the Swiftfoot Boots better than the Lightning Greaves in this deck, just a little bit, because we are targeting our own stuff. So sometimes hexproof is just better than Shroud. There's the argument of you can just pay a 0, move the boots, and then do it. But there's a lot of times where you only have that one really big creature on your board and you can't move the boots off. Then you've got some extra redundancy for just giving things unblockable, because you can't always keep your commander on board. Sometimes you just can't rely on them. So you have these guys as just a little bit of redundancy. Bidon of Thassa, it lets you just draw cards whenever you hit, which you have unblockable creatures you're going to be hitting. It draws cards and you can copy it to draw more cards. And then you have some guys that are just really good if you can give them unblockable, which our deck is trying to do. Augury Adept draws you cards, gains you life. Daxos does stuff. And Madomai, the Ageless, lets you take extra turns. There's a little bit of just anti-synergy because these guys are legendary, so making copies of them just kills one of them. Fun fact, you want to keep the token. I know a lot of times you'll just randomly choose to keep the original copy. I love tokens. I love token strategies. I love just making giant boards. And this was different. This was an interesting way to try and build tokens that I just never done before. So if you're looking for an interesting challenge, if you're a token player that just feels like you just want to mix it up a little bit, this is a really interesting deck to do it with. So, this has been the Totally Original Command Tower, and this has been Sam signing off, as well as his dragon. Say goodbye, dragon.